The wind chimes on the porch were the only sound as the taillights of my parents' SUV disappeared down the driveway. I looked down at the plastic container in my hands. Inside was a lukewarm slice of turkey, a scoop of instant mashed potatoes, and a single roll. My Thanksgiving dinner. Left on a freezing wooden porch like scrap for a stray dog. Inside the house, the lights were completely off. They hadn't even waited for me to get home from my shift at the hospital. They just left it there, locked the front door, and drove 20 miles to my aunt's house to celebrate with my sister. My chest tightens just thinking about the text message my mother sent 5 minutes later. Didn't want the food to spoil. See you tomorrow. That was the exact moment 27 years of trying to be the perfect daughter shattered completely. My name is Chloe. I'm 28 years old, and up until last November, I genuinely believed that if I just worked a little harder, sacrificed a little more, and kept my mouth shut, my family would finally love me the way they loved my sister. I'm a pediatric oncology nurse, a job that drains every ounce of your emotional bandwidth. That Thanksgiving, I had just pulled a grueling 12-hour shift, holding the hands of sick children so their own parents could go home and have a brief holiday meal. I was running on pure exhaustion and adrenaline, but the thought of getting home, changing out of my scrubs, and sitting down with my family kept me going. When I finally pulled into our driveway at 6:15 p.m., the absolute darkness of the house hit me like a physical blow. The porch light was off. The windows were pitch black. My stomach dropped as I walked up the steps, my knees shaking from fatigue. That's when I saw it. Resting on top of the rusted wicker table was a flimsy plastic container covered in aluminum foil. I peeled back the edge. A single, cold slice of turkey rested in a pool of congealed gravy, flanked by a scoop of instant potatoes and a stale dinner roll. They hadn't just forgotten me. They had actively packaged my exclusion, left it out in the freezing cold like scraps for a stray animal, locked the door, and left. To understand how my parents could leave me on a freezing porch with a plate of cold scraps, you have to understand the toxic hierarchy of our household. For as long as I can remember, my younger sister, Maya, was the undisputed golden child. Maya is 24, but she operates with the petulant entitlement of a toddler, a trait our parents gladly subsidized. If Maya wanted a new car, my parents drained their savings. If Maya failed a college class, it was the professor's fault. Meanwhile, I was the permanent scapegoat. My achievements were treated as basic obligations, while Maya's bare minimum efforts were celebrated like royal triumphs. When I graduated top of my class from nursing school, my parents skipped the ceremony because Maya had a minor cold. When I bought my own reliable used car after working 3 retail jobs, my father criticized the color. The dynamic was clear. I existed to provide stability and financial support, while Maya existed to be adored. Over the years, they perfected a system of subtle emotional manipulation that kept me craving their approval. They would drop hints about how independent and strong I was, which I now realize was just code for, "We don't want to spend money or effort on you." I allowed myself to be pushed into the background, constantly convincing myself that the next holiday, the next birthday, or the next big milestone would be the moment they finally looked at me and saw a daughter worthy of love. Instead, my compliance only made them bolder, setting the stage for a betrayal that would finally open my eyes to the reality of who they were. The most frustrating part about that night wasn't just the cold food. It was the fact that we had an explicit, ironclad agreement weeks in advance. Maya had decided she absolutely needed a premium tablet and a specific set of expensive medical textbooks for her upcoming semester, items my parents claimed they couldn't afford. So I did what I always did. I stepped up. I volunteered to work the brutal, double-pay holiday shift at the hospital specifically, so I could cover those costs for her. I gave up my holiday mornings so my sister could have an easier path. In exchange, my parents promised me, faithfully and repeatedly, that they would wait for me. The plan was simple. I would finish my shift at 6 p.m., drive straight home to change, and we would all ride together to my Aunt Sarah's house for the big family dinner at 7 p.m. My mother looked me in the eye the night before and said, "We wouldn't dream of starting without you, Chloe. Just get home safe." I carried that promise with me through 12 hours of screaming pagers and heartbreaking patient updates. It was the light at the end of a very dark tunnel. to discover that they had actually calculated my arrival time, packed up a miserable plate of leftovers, locked the doors, and hit the highway without me. All while knowing I was actively working to fund Maya's lifestyle was a level of calculated disrespect I couldn't comprehend. They didn't just break a promise. They used my generosity to fund their holiday, then locked me out of it. I sat in my car, staring at the darkened house, the plastic container freezing on the passenger seat. My hands shook as I unlocked my phone and opened the family group chat. I took a photo of the sad plate on the dark porch and sent it with a simple message. Why am I locked out? We had a plan. It took exactly 3 minutes for the typing bubbles to appear. My mother responded first, and her words were a masterclass in gaslighting. Chloe, don't start your drama tonight. Traffic was going to be terrible, and Maya was starving. We didn't want the food to spoil on the counter, so we did the responsible thing and left it for you. We're already at your aunt's. Just eat and drive over. Then Maya chimed in, dripping with her usual petty malice. Seriously, Chloe, you always have to make everything about you. You're ruining the holiday mood. We're trying to have a nice dinner, and you're crying over a scheduling mix-up. Just get over it. A scheduling mix-up. They had left 45 minutes before my shift even ended. I sat there in the silence of my car, watching their messages flash on the screen, expecting my father to defend me. Instead, he simply liked my mother's text. No apology. No accountability. Just cold, united hostility because I dared to question my own abandonment. They wanted me to accept the scraps of their life, smile, and drive 20 miles just to sit at the kids' table and pretend everything was fine. For the first time in 28 years, the sadness in my chest hardened into absolute, icy rage. I didn't drive to my aunt's house. Instead, I backed out of the driveway, tossed the plastic container into a roadside dumpster, and drove 30 miles in the opposite direction to a small, immaculate brick house in the suburbs. It belonged to my grandmother, Evelyn, my father's mother. She had been quietly estranged from my parents for years, mostly because she refused to enable Maya's toxic behavior and openly called out my mother's manipulative ways. Because of that, my parents had slowly cut her out, but she and I had always maintained a secret, fiercely loyal bond. When she opened the door and saw me standing there in my medical scrubs, exhausted and pale, her eyes softened instantly. I collapsed onto her sofa and told her everything. I showed her the texts, described the plate on the porch, and confessed how I had been working extra shifts just to buy Maya's textbooks. Evelyn listened in silence, her jaw tightening with every word. When I finished, she didn't just offer sympathy. She stood up, walked to her kitchen, and served me a beautiful, warm plate of homemade prime rib and roasted vegetables. As I ate, she sat across from me, her expression turning incredibly serious. Chloe, she said softly, your parents believe they are the masters of this family, but they forget who built the foundation. She reached into her sideboard and pulled out a thick, legal manila folder. They think they can treat you like an outsider in your own life, but I am about to give you the keys to their kingdom. It's time you stop paying for a family that locks you out. Evelyn opened the folder and pointed to a property deed. The house my parents lived in, the one where they had just locked me out, wasn't actually theirs. It belonged entirely to Evelyn. Years ago, she had allowed them to live there rent-free under a verbal agreement, intending to eventually pass the property down to both Maya and me. My parents completely took it for granted, acting as if they owned the place while treating me like an unwanted tenant. Disgusted by their latest cruelty, Evelyn looked me dead in the eye. They want to leave you in the cold? Let's see how they like it. The very next morning, Evelyn called her real estate attorney. By noon, she legally signed the entire deed over to me as a sole gift, effective immediately. I was now the legal landlord of my parents' house. The fallout was instantaneous. At 2 p.m., my phone exploded with a frantic call from my father. They had just checked their mail and found the official legal notice Evelyn's lawyer had couched to them. Chloe, what is the meaning of this? My father demanded, his voice trembling with panic. Your grandmother signed the house over to you? You need to fix this right now. For the first time, the power dynamic had completely shifted. I listened to his desperate shouting, feeling absolutely nothing but a cold, liberating sense of justice. They thought they could discard me, but they had accidentally handed me the keys to their entire lives. I didn't fix a thing. Instead, I gave them a taste of their own medicine. I hired a property management company and had them deliver a formal, legal lease agreement right to that very same front porch. If my parents and Maya wanted to continue living in my house, they would have to pay market rate rent directly to me, money I now use to fund my own independent life, while Maya finally had to get a real job to buy her own textbooks. Today, I live in a beautiful apartment closer to the hospital, surrounded by people who actually value my presence. Looking back, that cold plate on the porch was the best Thanksgiving gift they ever could have given me. It was the painful boundary I needed to finally break free. What would you have done if your family locked you out? Let me know below.